Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution. We got a World War III alert. Russia's tired of playing. Everybody's life is in danger. Putin's back against the wall. The Russian people is sick of him going soft on NATO. Let's get right to the content. Salute.
We could be seeing nuclear strikes here very soon because it really does seem like Russia is going to respond with some kind of nuclear strike on Ukraine to end the whole thing. Now, we have fresh warnings out today. If you missed it yesterday, the largest onslaught of drones and bombs ever sent out of Ukraine and into Russia, hit one of their biggest refineries. I dropped a video on that and covered it. And they have decimated Moscow. Moscow is burning today. Right now, as I speak, they're taking more hits, more incoming strikes. And the Kremlin saying that this is going to have absolutely catastrophic consequences, that they're backing them into a corner here to where the only thing that they can do is respond with one of their nukes. Some say that it's always been just that. That's been the test there to see if someone could coax Russia into using the nuke first, and then they would get wiped off the map in response. I'm going to say that if they use a tactical, small-scale weapon, may have nuclear components, but not the mushroom cloud nukes of Hiroshima. Those kind of weapons, if used the right way inside of Kiev, could dismantle the regime and could end the war. But nothing is going to end as long as Zelensky and all of his mini-me men are out there running around. If you don't know, Zelensky has more twins or doubles, so to speak, body doubles, than you're ever going to see, more than Slim Shady. Seriously, the guy has like a dozen in every place he walks into. And we've covered this before. It's pretty crazy. Never seen anybody with that many doubles. But when you're in an active war, living on the war front, I guess it makes sense if you want to survive, because if he didn't do it, he would probably be dead at this point. They have been trying to take him out, and that's the closest target. I mean, they have Kiev kind of surrounded in terms of Russia right now. It would be kind of dumb here to stall out and not just finish the whole thing in terms of a military aspect. Again, as long as they're not tricked into any kind of traps here, they could. I see them bombing the holy crap out of Kiev at this point. Hypersonics, I'm talking pounding them out hard at this point. So the people in Kiev, all the innocent people visiting, I don't know why anyone would be on vacation there, but you need to get out, because after all the years of war and me reporting on this and watching this, I've never been in a moment where I really feel in my soul that Russia's about to lick them and lick them hard. It's like, you're not going to do this to Moscow to this extent and not suffer some kind of repercussion. So they're yelling at the West. NATO, they're saying, you better back off. You better stop all the stuff. They were just trying to talk about peace, but you see what's going on here. It's like, if you don't come to the table and talk peace the moment Trump demands it, this is what's going to happen. And don't get it twisted. The West started this, and they are fully behind every bit that is going on in Ukraine. And Trump tries to act like it's not his war. They don't have anything to do with it. Well, he could have relieved all pressure and de-escalated the whole thing if he truly wanted to. But that was never the plan. I'm telling you, the Chinese put on a rover pic a long time ago a little bitty mushroom cloud coming off the earth, all so subtly. You could barely tell it was there. But when you zoomed in and you looked to see where it was right in the area between Kiev and Moscow. Imagine that. Something is destined to happen. I'm warning you. And I'd get ready. They're not going to back down from here. They want war. That's all they want. And look at Hormuz. Oh, peace deal, peace deal. strikes
No,
continue.
all
I mean,
hats want war.
people got to be idiots out there to keep biting on the carrot on the stick every day that there's going to be peace tomorrow morning. There's going to be peace tomorrow morning. They have literally said it over 50 times at this point and gone against it every single time. How ignorant are people out there? This is the flip the world economy, is what this whole thing is about. And in the process, it may lead to massive war, World War III, big war, whatever you want to call it. In my book, you've already entered World War III. It's just nukes haven't flown yet. And usually that's the last chapter. So people, get hip to what's going on here. It's a huge orchestration. And join me for the live streams Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where I got more time to cover this in greater detail.
Now, before we dig deep into why Russia is going to nuke the world, and they definitely going to do that if the small hats keep playing with them, it's because who the small hats are and why Putin and the Russian government hate them and know they have to deal with them. This is why, right here.
More than 60 million Russian Christians were then ruthlessly murdered. It's the genocide that Hollywood, for some reason, has never been interested in creating any films about. Is there some thread between radical Zionism and Russia? And the answer is yes. Of course there is. The entire bloody story of the communist revolutions, the various communist revolutions all across Europe, which sought to destroy and successfully destroyed the Christian empire. That's a now, if you fast forward, a Zionist historical story. We can start with the assassination of Tsar Alexander II. It was plotted by a terrorist group in Russia, known in English as the People's Will. That was the name of the terrorist group. And despite the fact, and these, again, are facts, that Jewish people represented only 4% of the population, they were overrepresented in this terrorist cell that was involved in the plotting and the eventual assassination of the Tsar. In 1881, which is when his carriage was passing through St. Petersburg, an assassin stepped forward and threw a bomb at his carriage. And the Tsar was unhurt, but one of his soldiers were, and he stepped out to check on him. And at that moment, a second assassin stepped forward and threw a bomb directly at the Tsar's feet. And he died. Incredible, by the way, background of this. The reason why I got into the story is I was just researching the history of radical feminism in our country, and it brought me to Russia and the Jewish women who were involved in the plotting and the planning of this assassination. Don't take it from me. This is not Russian propaganda. You can just read American articles. An American Jewish woman who offered this article, which I sourced in my book, her name is Deborah Hertz, who was interested in why so many Jewish women in particular were involved in terrorism. The article is entitled Dangerous Politics, Dangerous Liaisons, Love and Terror Among Jewish Women Radicals in Tsarist Russia. And I'm just reading a quotation here, but she writes, luckily, we do possess meticulous numbers on the People's Will, a notorious radical organization from the 1870s and the 1880s. These figures reveal that Jewish women were spectacularly overrepresented in this circle. The People's Will attracted 2,193 activists during the decade of the 80s. Among these 2,000, some radicals were 95 Jewish women who represented almost a third of the only 348 women that were in the party. Moreover, the 95 Jewish women were twice as well represented among the Jewish activists as the Christian women were among the Christian activists. Statistics on the high proportion of Jewish women in the Russian Social Democratic Movement and the Social Revolutionaries, the successor party to the People's Will, also show a very robust participation by Jewish women. When we seek to understand why Jewish women were so attracted to the left movements, we must consider the deteriorating situation of Russian Jewry in these years. The overwhelming majority of Jews were confined inside the Pale of Settlement, the western region of Russia, the former territory of the historic Polish-Lithuanian states. And so what happened after this assassination, what we're told in America is that there were these pogroms, right? It's been very difficult for anybody to show what law kicked Jewish people out, but they willfully left when people said you can't kill czars and plan assassinations and pamphleteer. And there was an overrepresentation factually of Jewish people involved in this. Anyway, after his death, the Christian Romanov dynasty was still in power. So the revolution against the empire was not complete, not until 1917, as you know, when the utterly satanic Bolshevik Revolution murdered the entire Romanov family. The assassination of the Romanov family was led by the Bolshevik executioner, Yakov Yurovsky. He was, yes, a Talmudic Jew. The family was awakened and told to dress under the guise of being relocated to a safer place. They were then led into a cellar room, arranged for a photograph first to quell rumors that they had escaped. And then Yurovsky read out an execution order, surprised them. The guards opened fire in a chaotic bloodbath. But because the daughters had on family jewels that were sewn into their corsets, many of the initial bullets were deflected. It forced the executioners to then use bayonets. Women and children bayoneted in a cellar. Can you imagine? And at that moment, the revolution was won. The communist regime began under Vladimir Lenin. The greatest genocide of all time began, is a better way of saying it. More than 60 million Russian Christians were then ruthlessly murdered. Their churches intentionally closed, destroyed, burned, state atheism mandated. It's the genocide that Hollywood, for some reason, has never been interested in creating any films about. And an important element here is what happened to their wealth. This was a Christian empire. The jewelries, the diamonds, the art, which belonged to these murdered Christian families who were thrown into gulags, where did it all go? Where is the stolen heritage of the Christian empire? Well, we have an idea where some of it went. To America, actually. The Diamond District in New York City, to be exact. I continue to be amazed. I talked about it on my former podcast, The Daily Wire, by the family story of actor Armie Hammer. Do you know him? You probably have heard of him. Anyways, his family history and how they got here is quite amazing. It's incredible that people are allowed to be wealthy, given what their families were involved in and how they became wealthy. But again, this isn't Russian propaganda. This is straight from the New York Times. You can learn about his family and how they came to America, who Julius Hammer was. This New York Times article was called The Riddle of Armand Hammer, and that would be his grandfather. It reads, in part, after Lenin seized power in 1917, Washington, D.C. not only refused to recognize his government, it did not relent until 1933, but it also effectively cut off Moscow's access to all of its gold and currency reserves in the United States. The net effect was that the Soviet government could not buy the supplies that it desperately needed to retain power. So to remedy the situation, Lenin appointed a Russian-German engineer named Ludwig Martins as his ambassador to the United States with the mission of organizing shipments of supplies to the Soviet Union. But since Martins could not get control of the Russian funds immediately, he turned to Julius Hammer for interim financing. Hammer paid the rent and other expenses of Martins' unofficial Soviet bureau in New York. Hammer was officially appointed the commercial attaché of the Soviet bureau and also was given an exclusive license for Russian trade. By 1918, the Soviet Union was financing the Soviet bureau by smuggling diamonds into New York. It was also art, by the way. Julius Hammer was responsible for converting these diamonds into cash to finance the purchase of Soviet supplies, according to the autobiography of one of Julius Hammer's fellow party members. Armand Hammer denies this, but in any case, the Hammer family soon moved from their modest home in the Bronx to luxurious quarters in the Hotel Ansonia in Manhattan, and Julius Hammer noticeably improved his style of living. The rabbit hole you could fall into following and tracing how these diamonds came to America is quite stunning. I've been down those roads, and it's just amazing that knowing this information makes you an anti-Semite. Now, the end of the story is fantastic. Despite hundreds of thousands of priests murdered, tens of millions of women and children murdered.
Just understand that these people stayed in the power until Putin took over, and I think 91 or something like that. 90 or something like that. The Ukraine-Russia war, it's all about what she's talking about right now. The small hats. Hate Russia guts for destroying the Khazarian Empire. Hate Putin guts for reclaiming Russia as an Orthodox Christian nation. And the nuclear war that's going to take place has everything to do with what she's talking about.
In concentration camps, Russian Christianity survived. Orthodox Christianity survived. Beauty and truth persisted. In fact, in the place where the revolutionaries bombed that royal carriage of Alexander II, Christians built a church right in the heart of St. Petersburg. And I'm going to show you a video that I shot right in the spot where the bomb was thrown on him. The church is appropriately called the Church of the Savior on Spilled Blood. And this is a video so you guys can see that's where his carriage was bombed. And that's where you gather to take a look at it. And this is just the ceiling. I mean, it's the most beautiful. I can't even explain to you the Christian heritage. This doesn't even do it justice. But I can tell you this. Here's my conclusion. What is feared about Russia? What is feared about Russia is the fact that it is no longer communist. It hasn't been communist, Dana, for over 30 years. It's survived communism. And the true history of what it went through, how it came to be, awaits any Christian or any person who's curious. Zionists in particular, like Ben Shapiro, like Mark Levin, they resent history, okay? They rewrite history. They seek to control Christians. You can only be a Judeo-Christian, whatever the hell that means. And I believe that you should take someone like Megyn Kelly very seriously when she says that she truly believes that if Mark Levin could get away with it, he would hurt her. He hates Russia. He says his grandparents are from Russia. That's a bit confusing. When did they come over, Mark? Who were they? What did they do? Why are you so maniacal? Why are you guys always calling for war and death and destruction? What is your true inheritance? You will know them by the fruit. That's what the Bible says. I encourage literally every person in the world to visit Russia. Apply for a visa. You actually are allowed to do that, Dana. Go see the Kremlin Museum. You will be spiritually moved by Russia. Everything, and I mean everything that we have been told about Russia is a lie. Okay? So when Tucker Carlson was going around looking at the grocery stores, that was not propaganda. That is real. Like I said, an entire Catholic family moved there from Iowa. And I asked them blankly, is this just in Moscow? They live an hour and a half outside. No. This is one of the most amazing things is how cheap the food is, how healthy the food is at every place is like Whole Foods. They particularly pointed out the grocery stores, but I don't want you to take it from me. I don't want you to take it from Tucker Carlson. I want you to go for yourself. I want you to use your own eyes, and I want you to believe your own eyes. My takeaway from visiting Russia is that it is our society that is on the decline, not theirs. Russia, like I said, has not been communist in over 30 years. What about us? Pornography, welfarism, nonstop war, debt, people telling us that this is freedom, right? This is great. This is you being free. You wouldn't want to live in Russia. That's the boogeyman syndrome, right? They're comparing it to something that you've never seen so that you don't, riot in the streets, demanding change, recognizing that we are actually being stolen from. Our inheritance is being stolen from. And these people are growing increasingly dangerous in their demands, increasingly communist in our demands. They want to control our words, to control our thoughts, to punish us, tagging the US Treasury. They want me to go to prison for going to Russia on a family vacation. You will know them by their fruits. So here are some photos from my trip that I wanted to share with you guys. And I had to take that photo because I had to upstage Tucker in the grocery stores, but they were actually so amazing. That picture, that person just looks like it's the Matrix. So I just had to include that. I mean, just like, look at these the icons, the Christian icons, the oldest Christian icons. You can just keep going through, but it was almost like a metaphysical experience. It's the only way I can describe it. And you feel it, like you feel the experience and you recognize that something has gone wrong and you seek to know what it is. that has gone wrong, like why our society doesn't look like this. Why is this safe? Why is it clean? Why are they lying to me about how safe and how clean it is? How on earth is this a country that is at a level 4 travel advisory? Like if Moscow is at a level 4 travel advisory, ladies and gentlemen, what the hell travel advisory is DC? What is the travel advisory of DC? Chicago, Los Angeles. We are so far in the cave, you guys, and people are creating shadows on the wall. We are at a very bad time in our country. Listening to Putin speak, when I got invited, you should go pursue that speech. The translations are important to understand what they are saying. I very much believe that what he is saying is correct. The West is on a decline because it has used sanctioning as a weapon. You don't have to look to Russia to see that. Look at how they're treating us. This podcast was effectively Russia. Sanctioned to hell, wasn't allowed to start because I wouldn't worship Israel, right? Candace can't even get into Australia. She's banned from Australia. She can't go. Kanye can't perform in the West. He's not allowed to do his songs because it's now ideological. You will support Bibi Netanyahu. You will support that genocide. But as Putin said, the sanctions are not applied evenly. Israel is not sanctioned by the United States. It's supported, right? Despite the amount of people and children that they have killed, they'll find any reason if they want to sanction you. They'll say, oh, you didn't support the LGBTQ movement enough, so we're going to sanction you. That is a controlling mechanism, and it is a weapon that is failing. And there is now a power that is building in the East. That is reality. You have to face that. Okay. You have to understand what is happening on a global scale and to understand why they are lying to you about the state of Russia. The country was beautiful. I want to go back. I absolutely will visit. I will stay a longer time in Moscow. It felt futuristic. The SPIEF conference was absolutely futuristic. And all I can do is tell you guys the truth. There's no one that funds me, as I've always told you. And that is why they are constantly attacking me, is because they've already figured out that I can't be controlled by money. I want to tell the truth, and I want our kids to have a chance in the future. And right now it feels like America is being squeezed, that our servicemen are being lied to and squeezed, and it is not to the benefit of any of our families. It's only to its detriment.
Well, my dear truth seekers, after representatives of the Kiev regime, with the support of their European masters, launched a massive drone strike on Moscow on the night of June 18, I began to closely monitor the reaction of Russian society to this enemy attack. And I noticed that the citizens of Russia began to ask the same question. What ultimately needs to occur for the Russian authorities to decide to utilize tactical nuclear weapons against the enemy? And you know what? The chairman of the Presidium of the Council on Foreign and Defense Policy, a respected Russian military expert, political scientist, and the Kremlin's chief strategist, Sergei Karaganov, gave us the answer to that question. My dear truth seekers, let me remind you that Sergei Karaganov has great authority in the expert community. All his predictions came true with frightening accuracy. Because of his habit of telling only the truth, analysts and journalists around the world began calling Sergei Karaganov the Doomsday Professor. So, a few hours ago, I carefully watched an interview with Sergei Karaganov, which he gave to the Ukrainian journalist Diana Panchenko, who was forced to flee Ukraine because she disagreed with Zelensky's policies. And guess what? The words that Sergei Karaganov said about the future of Ukraine and Europe were really shocking. My friends, before I voice what Sergei Karaganov said, I want you to finally understand that the special military operation has been going on for so long because of the Russian authorities' slowness and lack of determination. I am absolutely sure that if in February 2022, a week before the start of a special military operation, Russia had conducted a demonstration nuclear explosion of its most powerful ballistic missile at the Novaya Zemlya test site, the West would never have dared to start supplying Ukraine with all types of weapons, including intelligence and military specialists. However, due to the Russian authorities' slowness and lack of determination, precious time was lost. The West realized that the Kremlin would not order the Russian army to act harshly, and therefore, European and American globalists began to cross all the red lines that Moscow had drawn. Simply put, all of Vladimir Putin's attempts to avoid escalation with the West only provoke it. At the moment, due to the Kremlin's lack of determination, the Russian army is fighting not only with its hands tied, but also with huge weights on its legs. However, Sergei Karaganov notes that this will not last forever. According to him, the Russian authorities will have to escalate the conflict on their own very soon. This will allow Russia not only to end the special military operation with victory, but also to save humanity from unleashing a new global war. Sergei Karaganov notes that in 2027, Russia will have to use Orshnik ballistic missiles to destroy weapons factories in European countries such as Germany, Poland, and Romania. At the same time, he stressed that if, after that, the Europeans do not calm down and continue to support Ukraine, Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Moreover, Sergei Karaganov also mentioned the name of the Russian general who would deliver this blow. According to him, this is the legendary General Sergei Surovikin, also known as General Armageddon. At the moment, Vladimir Putin is preparing psychologically and accumulating determination to deliver a crushing blow to Ukraine and Europe. However, Putin would never order such a strike himself. To do this, he will give carte blanche to General Surovikin. And, I assure you, at the crucial moment, General Armageddon's hand will not waver. This will happen in 2027. To begin with, General Surovikin will launch a non-nuclear strike on Germany, Poland, and Romania, in order to completely cut off the flow of weapons to Ukraine. If the Europeans start snapping, General Surovikin will deliver the next blow with the help of tactical nuclear weapons, Sergei Karaganov said. Moreover, Sergei Karaganov also confirmed that the special military operation will end only after the entire left bank of the Dnieper River, including regions such as Odessa and Nikolaev, comes under Russian control. At the same time, he noted that Moscow would not annex the Kiev region and Kiev itself to the Russian Federation. Well, my friends, given that all of Sergei Karaganov's predictions have always come true, it can be stated that if the Western masters of the Kiev regime do not calm down, they will face very serious problems with disastrous consequences for both Ukraine and Europe itself. Meanwhile, war correspondents reported on another success of the Russian troops on the battlefield. So, a few hours ago, they announced that Russian units had taken full control of the settlement of Dolgaya Bacha, in the Donetsk direction of the front. This settlement is located southwest of the strategically important city of Konstantinovka, where Russian units have already taken control of 95% of the city's territory. By the way, sources in the Russian military department have confirmed that Konstantinovka has been almost completely liberated by Russian troops. According to them, as of June 20, 2026, only 5% of this strategically important city's territory remains under the Ukrainian army's control. In particular, we are talking about the northwestern outskirts of Konstantinovka, in the Novosilovka microdistrict. Simultaneously with this, Russian units are advancing on the northern flank of the city. All this indicates that the Ukrainian army has completely lost the ability to restrain the advance of Russian troops in this city. Over the past 24 hours, the successes of the Russian army have also been recorded in the Sumy region. In particular, units of the group of troops Sever took full control of the settlement of Bachevsk. Thus, Russia has expanded the buffer zone on the so-called Bachevsky Ledge. My dear truth seekers, it is also worth noting the serious successes of the Russian army in the strategically important city of Krasny Liman. So, on the morning of June 19th, war correspondents confirmed that Russian units had captured several quarters in different parts of the city. It is reported that having advanced in the south of the city, Russian troops struck the flank of a part of the Ukrainian garrison, located there, causing significant damage to it. As a result, all this led to the collapse of the Ukrainian defense both within the boundaries of Krasny Liman and in its vicinity. At the moment, Russian troops have come close to such railway stations as Novatorskia and Zeleny Klin. It is noteworthy that military experts have already called everything that is happening a systemic defeat of the Ukrainian army. However, the Russian army's success in the special military operation zone did not end there. On the evening of June 19th, the Russian Defense Ministry officially announced that the Russian army had completely liberated such settlements as Novy Donbass, Kutuzovka, and Ryalexandrovka, in the Donetsk direction of the front. Thus, Russia has come even closer to fulfilling its main goal: the complete expulsion of the Ukrainian army from the territory of Donbass.
This is WW3, and you were looking at massive explosions from Russia rocking Ukraine. They have targeted Zelensky's regime positions, and Russian Su-34 jets have started to pound all those areas. As you can see here, they say Fab 500 and 1500 bombs used. They state that they have hit a UAV command post and a temporary deployment area of the 81st Separate Air Mobile Brigade. So they're hitting prime targets. Some reports have said that Zelensky is on the run. Some have said that they hit him. But until there's confirmation of a body, you're not going to see that in the headlines. Remember, Zelensky has a ton of body doubles out there, but he's on the run. They are actively hunting him, trying to take him out. Russia says they are abandoning rules of war. Putin's deputy raising nuclear strike fears. Again, they're saying that they're going to respond however they want. So if it's tactical nukes, hypersonic missiles, anything like that, it all goes at this point. They're saying there's no rules to be followed. So they seem to be headhunting Zelensky. I expect something huge to come out of this area rather soon. I'm talking Zelensky's back into a corner. Either they get him and they end this thing, or they hit Moscow with something bigger than we've ever seen yet. And it could be nuclear, because they just don't seem to care. I'll leave a link. Join me for the live streams Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, where I'm talking about this in a
Miriam Adelson, the Israeli billionaire that forked up $250 million for Trump's presidential campaign, her media outlet, Israel Hayom, is now putting out an article that Trump is a traitor, an embarrassment, and a failure for the Iran peace deal. That's how much she flipped, or her media outlet flipped on Trump because he went forward with peace with Iran and stopping the bloodshed. So I'm going to go ahead and read to you guys this article. It's truly insane. And actually, I want to stop that. When I say he chose peace to stop the bloodshed, what he really chose is just to allow negotiations for another 60 days. So that way the oil prices and the markets are a little bit better. That's the reason. Let me go ahead and share my full screen here so that way you guys can see this. Here's the article. You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed. Mr. President, you have gravely harmed the human interests of the enlightened world, and you may be remembered forever as the president who brought about America's humiliation. You betrayed us, the Israelis, and in a single moment, the contempt you once faced suddenly seemed so justified and logical. Danny Zakin writes to the U.S. president. Crazy. I'm also gonna show you guys this man's X profile, the authors, because I was able to find it. Mr. President, my name is Danny Zakin. Danny, you're a psychopath. I'm a proud Israeli citizen who's not an American citizen, who so should just be quiet, who has worked in journalism and covered developments in the region and around the world, including our country's relation with the great U.S. for many years. And from where I see it, where I sit near Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the people of Israel, since the days of the kingdoms of David and Solomon, I say to you, you made a colossal mistake. I'd really love just to DNA test this guy and see the guy who says that he descends from, the Middle East. I'd really love to see whenever they pull this thing. It just makes me roll my eyes. You failed by signing a surrender agreement with a murderous and cruel terror regime. You severely harmed American interests, that's false, and the democratic and human values of the enlightened world. And you turned over the hourglass toward the next war, which your successors will have to deal with in the years to come. In doing so, you sealed the fate of many thousands of people, civilians, women, and children, and elderly, who the regime in Iran will torture and murder, just as it murdered more than 40,000 of them at the beginning of the year. Where do they inflate these numbers from? Where does the numbers come from? So, citizens of the neighboring countries whom Iran and its terrorist proxies will murder, fighters who will be killed in the war against Iran and terrorism it operates, and yes, many Americans too. It just goes on. And it's really just just straight up trashing him, and has now been America, supposed to return to greatness, has now been humiliated into the dust. The longer we stayed into it, the longer we would have been humiliated in the dust. You have been the president. You could have been that president as you claim to be, but you failed. You missed the opportunity. Instead, unless you change course against the advice of our vice president and envoy, they think Steve Witkoff is a Jew that has betrayed Israel. They wrote a whole article on Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who supposedly were in support of this deal, that stated that they were traitors to their real home in Israel. You will be forever remembered as the president who brought about humiliation of great America, and gravely damaged its strategic power and its leading status in the world. If the contempt for you suddenly seems so justified and logical. Wow. Oh my gosh. They're really upset with him. When you were elected, there was a huge sigh of relief from Israel. This thing goes on. There's no way I can read all of this. Attached excuses. And he's going on stating that he lies. I mean, wow. And last word from an Israeli: we feel betrayed, nothing less, because your heart was, it seemed, in the right place with all of your flaws. You acted against it. You lost your patience and your moral and leadership compass. Only if you walk this back and avoid reaching a final agreement with Iran might there be a correction. Thank you for your attention. Danny Zakin, near Jerusalem. This is the psychopath that put together that article. The thing is, they talk to us as if we owe them something. Who the hell are you? Just like, we don't owe you anything. We don't owe you anything. You guys are not the United States of America. Piss off. You're not this country. You don't have any say in what we do. You don't have any say in what we do, because guess what? We're the one who funds you guys. You guys are just a welfare state. Get in line. Get in line. So a journalist with ethics, command. He's a journalist with ethics. Huwa biyahki means he says in Arabic. A journalist with ethics, former commander of IDF Radio, former chairman of Journalists Association, Commentator for Israel Hayom, and soon something else in the present. Fresh grandpa, you're a psychopath is what you are. And here he is with the IDF. As usual, I mean, this is, oh wow, not only in Israel, the fear in Arab countries of the American retreat. You know what I really dislike, what I've noticed that pro-Israel talking heads, Israelis, the Israel mob, what they like to do, they like to speak on behalf of Palestinians. And I've never done that. I don't speak on behalf of other people in that way. I don't even speak on behalf of Palestinians. I speak on behalf of myself. I've never once said all Palestinians feel this way. What's interesting, though, is they love to speak on behalf of the Middle East, of Palestinians, of Arabs, and tell us how we feel about something. No, we don't. We don't. You don't get to speak on our behalf. It's so manipulative, and it's just such a weasel move. Who are you to speak on behalf of somebody when they never told you that and they don't like you anyways? You're nothing to them. You're trash. So who are you to speak on behalf of any other person? And so just constant, just hatred, anger, and now apparently Donald Trump is the worst person. Mr. President, this is another quote from the article that I just read. You have gravely harmed the human interests of the enlightened world. That's exactly what I basically wrote. The contempt you've once faced suddenly seemed so justified and, logical. How in the hell are they so brainwashed to think that now the president of the United States is their biggest threat? 2 weeks ago, someone in your circle made sure to leak the sharp conversation you had with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And I deliberately emphasize the full title. He is not Bibi. He's the elected prime minister of an independent and sovereign state of Israel, as would be anyone else sitting in his chair. Just kick rocks. And you not only failed to downplay the importance of that difficult conversation, you added to it in conversation with journalists while spreading falsehoods about how I saved his ass from prison. No, sir, the trial is continuing, and the independent court or the other competent authorities will determine that, not you. Oh my God. And the megalomaniacal statement that without you, Israel would not exist. Well, Israel existed before you and will exist long after you. Did Israel exist before Trump? No, it didn't. How old is Trump? Is Trump? No way. Isn't Trump older than Israel? Let me see. No, okay, he's not. Donald Trump was born in 1946. The state of Israel was declared on May 1948. Wait, what? Wait. AI is wrong. No, look. No, Donald Trump is not older than Israel. Donald Trump is nearly 2 years older than the modern state. What? This is why you can't trust AI. Yes, he's 2 years older than Israel. Donald Trump is 2 years older than Israel. So yes, it never existed before Trump, actually. Israel did not exist until after Trump. You have just now made that a little more difficult. Your ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, rightly said, without Israel, America would not exist. And behind him stands millions of Christian believers, good American citizens who feel the exact same way. America existed before you guys. This is they're so, I can't. This is the most twisted, totally untouched from reality type of statement somebody could make. America has existed since 1776. Israel isn't even 80 years old. What are you on about? How do they make up these? They just make up straight up lies, and then they just assume that people are not going to call them out. Israel has not existed before Trump, and the current state of Israel, that was basically Rothschilds created with Britain. That has nothing to do with previous states of Israel, who Palestinians have more genetic ties to than anybody from Europe. It just, all of it is such brainwashing. It makes you question what's going on here. It's what? What is this? One time I went to Palestine in 2022. And when I went to Palestine in 2022, and it's going to be, hopefully I'll get to go back there again when Palestine is free one day. Went to the West Bank, visited my family, went to Bethlehem, which is in the West Bank. And I went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and I did all of the stuff. I went to all of the religious sites. And I also wanted to go to the Church of the Nativity, and I went to Masjid al-Aqsa. I like to go to all the religious sites, honestly. And And when I went, obviously, you have to go into Jerusalem, so you have to cross the border, and you have to go into what is considered Israel, or Israeli controlled. And so I went in, and when I went in, I went into a coffee shop near the masjid. There's all of these little like shops and stuff where you can buy like leather bags and all these cool stuff. So I was there, and it's all the whole place is full. Like all the shops are just tons of them are just all Arabs. They're all Palestinians. And there was one Israeli guy, and I mean, I wasn't. He thought I was, and I am an American. He thought I was like English. I don't know. I guess he thought that my ancestry was European or something. And he comes up to me, and he's just like, he's talking, and he says that, you know, all of these Arabs, they just need to go back to where they're from. And then obviously I immediately told him, what are you talking about? I'm Palestinian. He's like, no, you're not. You don't exist. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, see this? This is my blood. My blood is from this land. You don't exist. You're not from here. Go back to Saudi Arabia. I went from being European to being a Saudi Arabian. Pick your mind, dude. You know what I mean? So this is genuinely how they believe. They think that Palestinians have no ties to the land that they've been from for generations. And then they criticize anybody else who doesn't confirm their delusional mindset. Anyways, that's it for this video, guys. If you found it interesting, I'd appreciate it. Go ahead and click the subscribe button below and give it a thumbs up as well. Joe Kent, the former National Counterterrorism Director, he posted on X today regarding how it's really important we just finally restrain Israel and actually reel them in. Otherwise, these psychopaths are going to bomb the entire Middle East continuously. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you and then show you some other statements. For the MOU to hold between the United States and Iran and result in lasting peace, we must restrict aid to Israel immediately and make it clear that we will not defend them should Iran opt to strike in response to Israel's attack in Lebanon. Israel has not responded to our verbal and written demands. That is not going to change unless we change it by taking action. Israel claims sovereignty and continues to threaten our peace deal, yet they rely on us to bail them out. This is calculated. We have to respond accordingly and stop this cycle once and for all, lead with action, remove their leverage. Otherwise, they will not take us seriously. And open SOH, Strait of Hormuz, and peace in the region have to be our focus. Israel is playing spoiler. We must limit their ability to do so. I mean, I think anybody that is looking at what's going on rationally would 100% agree. What's interesting, though, is he stated one thing that I want to mention. He stated, for the MOU to hold, we must restrict aid and make it clear that we will not defend them should Iran should Iran opt to strike in response to Israel's attacks. Guess what? Donald Trump made a statement yesterday. He was recorded, interviewed, and he stated if Iran was to strike Israel, he would hop in. Trump made that statement yesterday. This is immediately after Trump stated that there is going to be a ceasefire in Lebanon, and Israel never commented, stating, yes, that's going to happen. And then Trump says, yes, we will come to the defense of Israel. Why are we continuously coming to this welfare state's defense when every single time they're just pulling us into more problems and they're basically blowing up the planet? Why is it on us to take care of this little project? Well, I think it should be dismantled personally. But right now, apparently, you know, we have to keep shifting the Overton window until we can get to that point. So for the time being, why the hell do we have to deal with this project? They don't want to listen. They don't want to cooperate. Why is it on us? I think there's enough public support for the idea of just dropping them right now. If there is enough public support with everything going on, with the idea of just telling Israel, you're on your own and we're not going to veto you at the United Nations. And if you keep doing this, we might even consider taking financial measures, considering just threatening them with the idea of sanctions. Why don't we do that sort of stuff? You know, I was thinking for a while, well, maybe it's because there's so many evangelical Christians and so many Israel supporters. And then there's also a lot of MAGA supporters. But here's the thing. If it really came down to Israel or Trump, I think that base, that Trump-obsessed base, would probably listen to Trump. it'd probably be listen to Trump. If Trump just said, we're going to reel Israel in for the benefit of the United States of America and for the benefit of Israel, not that I care, but that's how he would frame it. If he just said something like that, his base would just take it up. He would just spin it in whatever language that he usually uses. They'd eat that up. So why not enforce that? So there's some other, and this is a Washington Post article acting as if we don't already know this. U.S. intelligence agencies have warned the Trump administration that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is likely to take steps that will undermine President Trump's efforts to reach a lasting peace deal with Iran. That's already going on. You don't need the CIA to tell anybody that. I can tell you that right now. I'm pretty sure we all can. This doesn't require the CIA or FBI or any other intelligence agency to warn that, hey, we have this welfare project that's trying to drag us into war, and they're going to do everything they can to thwart this deal. I don't think you have to be a high IQ person to kind of just recognize that's already what's happening. It's not Israeli prime minister is likely to take steps. He already has taken the steps. The steps have already been walked. They've been taken. So, they're delusional. There's another statement he made, Joe Kent. He said, it should be very clear to everyone by now that the Israelis have dramatically different strategic goals than we do and will take our support while only pursuing their interests and expect us to just accept that as the status quo. What should also be clear is that this status quo works against our strategic goals. Bibi is helping to illustrate this. And Netanyahu today was posting a video of, he stated, 150 Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, but we know that they're just leveling straight up buildings. Here's an interesting thing. Barak Ravid, he's an actual Israeli, and he claims he's a reporter, but he used to work for Israel's Unit 8200. And he stated, a senior U.S. official tells me Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to a renewed ceasefire in Lebanon starting at 4. The new agreement was brokered by the U.S. and Qatar after talks with Israel and Iran. U.S. official tells me Netanyahu had agreed 100% to renew the ceasefire at Lebanon. Netanyahu's office still hasn't confirmed that. We've seen this before. We know how this plays out. They're just going to say one thing. They're going to do the exact other. Buckley Carlson, Tucker Carlson's brother, stated, a height of humiliation. Israel has responded to our written or verbal demands, hasn't responded. Will Trump and Vance issue more tough talk, or will they actually take action? Now, I want to go ahead and read to you guys this Washington Post article here, but here's the thing, I really think what JD Vance is doing, it feels nice watching him just kind of call out the Israelis and watching the Israelis be mad. I think we can all agree it's nice hearing him say those sort of things, but unless it's backed with action, it's just rhetoric. And we've heard too much rhetoric. It's kind of like how, we'll hear the Democratic establishment say we support a two-state solution and then not take one measure, not a teeny action to actually progress towards that. It's that exact sort of thing to where it's just all BS. It's just they're saying one thing, but they're not even enforcing it or doing anything about it. This 20-point plan for Gaza, I thought the whole plan was to get to the next phase. It's never going to get to the next phase. The Israelis are outwardly stating we're not going to go to the next phase. We're going to control Gaza forever. They're stating that right now. So in what world is any of Trump's plans or any of his peace proposals going to go anywhere if this is what they're actively stating? The Washington Post stated, U.S. intelligence warns Israel is likely to undermine the peace plan again. And it states Israel appears intent on maintaining military operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon, against Iran's proxy Hezbollah. We should start calling Israel America's proxy, Israel. An aim that will flout a core element of the fledgling agreement that calls for an end to hostilities in the country. The analysis comes as a moment of growing tension. Where's the analysis? They don't even list it. The new U.S. intelligence report concludes that in the face of national elections this fall, Netanyahu's political survival is linked to showing his domestic audience that he will not withdraw troops from Lebanon and that he is intent on escalating the fighting with Hezbollah, said one U.S. official. Officials, like others interviewed, spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the matter's sensitivity. I think that, again, none of us needed to read a U.S. intelligence report. Pretty sure J.D. Vance made a video stating the same thing today, or he was interviewed stating the same thing today. Netanyahu has elections coming up. That he wants to stay out of prison. So clearly he's going to do whatever he has to do in order to stay out of prison, in order to continue being Israeli prime minister. Of course he's going to try to thwart this. Even if elections weren't on the line, he would still do this because Israel has us in a stranglehold. So how wouldn't they? The whole world is recognizing what Israel is doing, yet America doesn't have any courage to take action, or much of America is, too embroiled in this parasite. It's an Israeli parasite. That's what it is. If it's steering you in a way that's not for the benefit of American interests, then that thing is not. It's not a good ally. It's an enemy. It should be treated like an enemy. Trump administration officials insist that the terms do not prevent Israel from retaliating against Hezbollah if fired, and that Netanyahu's concerns pale in comparison to the need to complete a deal and reopen the Strait of Hormuz to stave off a global economic crisis. So here's the thing, guys, that I wanted to say. I said this before, and this is actually wonderful, is that this is the first time in my life, and I just turned 30. This is the first time in my life where I've seen a situation where the interests of Zionism and the interests of the financial markets diverge to this degree. And I honestly never thought that Zionism could be, I never thought that the elite could ever allow Zionism to go to the wayside. It just doesn't. It just seems like everything we've grown up seeing, it feels like it's just not possible. But here's a situation in which, for once, the interests of Zionism diverge from financial markets, and the world chose the financial markets. Trump chose the financial markets. That's a big deal. That's massive, because what did it show us? That we can capitalize on it. We just have to continue to promote ways in which the interests of Israel and financial markets diverge. Seems difficult, but I think that the tides are already heading in that direction. Much of the Middle East now, these rich Gulf oil countries, they want foreign investments. International bankers, they want to have places, they want to have stability to where they can store their money, while the military industrial complex likes the bombing because it feeds into them, it feeds into their businesses. Right now, there's a crossroads, and also considering the fact that much of the world right now is undergoing a major energy crisis, and it was really on the brink of collapse for some countries. They were really struggling. They barely had enough reserves to really keep holding through. I hope that things like this, I hope that where things are headed, Israel just becomes so isolated, and finally the United States is able to take action. We also have to be realistic, though. What's U.S. action going to be? Like, they just withhold it from Israel for a while. The current administration is still going to allow the settlements to go on. That's not going to stop. They're still going to veto Israel at the United Nations. That's not going to stop. So what? We were able to kind of stop them from continuing this war that they put us through. And then what? How are we going to go from here to actually ending this problem once and for all? I don't know the answer to that right now. I mean, I think it takes a total change in U.S. policy, but we can't imagine the Trump administration going full 180. That's just not going to happen. They haven't made one statement condemning any of Israel's actions in Gaza or the West Bank. You think they're going to start doing so now? Absolutely not. Doesn't mean, though, we still shouldn't be fueling the fires and, allowing this sort of anger to continue happening. I think the more we get Israelis pissed off at Trump, one of them is going to say something unhinged, and Trump's going to respond on Truth Social, and he's going to take action because of it, just because of his personality. I think that's a win for everybody. So let's pray. Anyways, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, I'd appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button as well. It helps me reach more people like you. Also, if you haven't yet, and you see people in the comments with all those emojis, or there's something you really want to tell me, one of the best things you can do is join as a member. So if you click the join button below next to the subscribe,
and they sent Trump into a complete imbroglio, one of the worst military defeats, maybe the worst military defeat the United States has suffered. I say, period. Maybe since like the Civil War, which was just a defeat for the South and a sort of spiritual defeat for the American public because so many Americans killed each other. I left out Vietnam because the economic damage of Vietnam was contained. This was a defeat for U.S. empire that the U.S. will never recover from, and will obliterate, or will ultimately lead to the erosion of the power of the petrodollar. The Strait of Hormuz is still not open. the three marks helped lead Donald Trump into this, and now they stand exposed. And the sort of MAGA influencers who exist out of their loyalty to Trump and are just there to put forward whatever message Donald Trump wants them to put forward. There's actually a gap between the Israel firsters and the sort of MAGA loyalist paid influencers right now. You can see it with Mark Levin attacking Trump and attacking everyone. He's even attacking Israeli opposition figures, like a Jewish American is being more Israeli than Yair Lapid. They look crazy. And what they say doesn't make sense to the American public. Like you're going to see reflected in these comments that the commenters are going to say that what I'm saying makes a lot more sense than what Mark Dubowitz was saying last week. I watched that interview you had with him, and he seemed like he was in full panic mode. And nothing was adding up because his entire vision of what was going to happen in Iran and everything that he and the Foundation for the Destruction of Democracies, his Israeli cutout think tank in Washington, gave to Trump, the blueprint they put forward for this war, it completely failed because it represented Zionist logic. So, why does one, Jewish commentator make more sense than the other Jewish commentator? I'm not a Zionist. That's why the commenters are going to be saying this actually reflects the reality that I live in more than this other guy who's just trying to spin to get Trump back into the war. And here's another problem that Zionists face right now. People just don't want to see more killing. They don't want to see another Minab school strike. 168 people killed, teachers, over 130 schoolgirls on the first day of the war. Zionists had no problem with that. And Pete Hegseth had no problem with that. That was horrifying to everyone. And, they killed female volleyball players in Lamerd, Iran on that same day, testing a new missile for Lockheed Martin. What's happening right now in Lebanon? 4 Israeli soldiers were killed yesterday. And how did Israel retaliate? Over 150 airstrikes, killing 48 people and wounding 96, according to Lebanese Ministry of Health statistics right now. That's how they respond. People can't take this anymore, but Zionists want more of it. They're pushing Trump for more of it, and they're in full panic mode that they won't have this. It's like they're addicted to killing. It's like they see force and bombing apartment buildings as a goal in itself. Even Trump has said Netanyahu would get on the phone with me every day and tell me which apartment buildings to bring down, and I found this a little bit strange. So they stand exposed right now, and the United States public is responding positively to the rhetoric of J.D. Vance. And just one other point, I think if this war had succeeded, obviously we wouldn't be hearing this rhetoric from Vance. Vance would be completely diminished because he was considered one of the restrainers, and Marco Rubio would be out there celebrating Israel. He'd be joining in with this, festival of Israeli hegemony and demanding more killing. Let's send the troops into Tehran. I don't know what they'd be doing right now if this war had somehow succeeded. It was a regime change war, but it failed. And it failed because we have to acknowledge this. Like, it's not that the United States establishment naturally opposes these wars. They're just looking at the failure and the economic consequences and saying Zionist logic doesn't correspond with ours. But we have to acknowledge why it failed. It failed because of the wisdom of figures like Hassan Tehrani Moghadam and Ali Hajizadeh, who are former IRGC generals who basically designed Iran's strategy for years. They were preparing for this. Both are dead. Moghadam was killed in 2013 while testing a new ballistic missile, and Hajizadeh was killed during the 12-day war. I think on the first day he was assassinated. What did they do? Moghadam designed Iran's ballistic missile program. I got a chance to take a look at it a month before the 12-day war last year at the Iran's Aerospace Expo Park outside Tehran. And they show the entire evolution of this ballistic missile program, which is completely legal under international law. They're allowed to do it. It is essential to Iran's deterrence. But they weren't going to be able to get the parts for a sophisticated aircraft the way Israel does. So this is their substitute for an air force. And it has worked. It gave them the ability to basically remove U.S. bases from the region. I think many of the U.S. bases in the Gulf states will not come back. The ballistic missiles also pried the Gulf leadership away from this oil protection racket where they would basically pay to have U.S. bases there to protect their infrastructure. Now they realize there is no protection and they have to have normal relations with their neighbor, Iran. Hajizadeh designed the Operation True Promise responses to Israeli terrorism and aggression, which ultimately became a response to U.S.-Israeli aggression. And these, you could see the progression from True Promise 1 to 3 and 4, how much more sophisticated the targeting became, how much better the coordination between drones and ballistic missiles became, the pacing of the ballistic missiles, how much more clever it was. And then the designing of the missile cities. These were very controversial in Iran. And you had like Iran International and a lot of these Israeli or Saudi or CIA-backed outlets that are designed to kind of promote regime change in Iran. They would always point to the missile cities as this waste of money, that the IRGC was wasting money that could have been used on the Iranian public, or like them giving money to their allies in Hezbollah. The missile cities proved to be durable and resilient. I mean, there was that one smaller missile city in Yazd that just kept getting hammered day after day by US and Israeli bombs, and it kept launching. The launches kept coming. So the missile cities protected the firing capacity. And then the investment in just a cheap Shahid drone program, which was so effective that the US reverse engineered the Shahid drone into the Lucas drone. And then finally, the willingness, the ability, and also the small fast boats. We kept hearing, oh, operational success. The US has destroyed Iran's Navy. And Trump was being told this lie again and again. The Navy's been destroyed. Well, then why were they able to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed? Because the Navy wasn't destroyed. There were naval bases around the Strait of Hormuz that were fortified, kind of like the missile cities, which would allow for launching of drones and these small fast boats. So more wisdom from the IRGC, which allowed the Strait of Hormuz to be closed. And we're still at a point where Iran has more cards to lay on the table. Bab el-Mandeb to the Red Sea could still be closed by Iran and its allies in Yemen. So this is reality, okay? This is the military reality. The U.S. and Israel lost. This isn't the Gulf War anymore, where smart bombs and the F-15s are going to be able to just demolish some worn-out post-colonial Arab Ba'athist army that's armed by the Soviet Union. This is a more sophisticated beast you're talking about that has mastered asymmetrical warfare. And there's nothing that can be done about that reality. If U.S. force cannot triumph over that reality, then Zionist logic cannot be imposed and it will be discredited. So we have to acknowledge the military reality along with the political one.
So how does the regional reality look like now? I made a post a few weeks ago now that for regional peace to exist, Iran has to recognize Israel's right to exist, and Israel has to stop their foreign policy approach to regime change in Iran. Both have to change their approach to one another. But my question is broader than that. What about Hezbollah? I don't like Hezbollah. I think we've had a discussion before. Yeah, but I've agreed. I was born there, but I've agreed. I understand reality. Not now. My position is Hezbollah will be there to stay. I think as long as Mujtaba Khamenei wants Hezbollah to remain, it will remain. I don't think a military solution is the right solution. It has to be diplomatic. But what happens to Hezbollah? What happens in Syria? What happens to the Gulf? Where there's talks about an alliance between Turkey, Qatar, Saudi, Egypt, Pakistan, and maybe even Iran. What does the UAE do? The UAE has already improved relations again with Iran. There's been multiple visits. So how does the region look like post this war?
Well, you said that Iran has to recognize Israel's right to exist. And I think that's a key point. I mean, a right to exist is what? Because the Palestine Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat in 1988 recognized Israel's right to exist. Did you know that? What does that mean? Right to exist as what?
I'll just clarify it very quickly. I know that's kind of a vague term that people throw around. Tucker did a great job, questioning what that term even means. I think it's I'll rephrase it to Iran has to change their approach to Israel. Stop talking about wiping out the Israeli state. They can disagree with Israeli foreign policy. They can clash when it comes to Palestinian issues, Hezbollah. But I think there has to be improved relations for the sake of Lebanon, for the sake of Syria, for the sake of Yemen. But then it comes down to the Palestine issue, which I have no idea how we can solve that. So that could be the core issue. And without solving that, everything else won't be solved either. So that's I'm countering my own point.
Okay, well, this goes to this speaks to the point that I've been making throughout this entire conversation. When what is Israel's right to exist mean, and what does Iran have to accept? I think Iran would accept an Israel that would not be aggressive. I think Iran would accept an Israel that went along with the Arab peace initiative of 2002 put forward by, I think, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. And it was introduced through Thomas Friedman's column at the New York Times, not a particularly radical proposal for a Palestinian state. That's what Saudi Arabia still demands as a condition of normalization. They can't have it. Nobody can have that. Palestinians certainly can't have that. Why not? Zionist logic. We have to interrogate Zionism to understand one of the central crises of humanity today, which is that there's this tiny little nation that exists outside the realm of international law, normal international relations, and basic human decency and morality, because it is an officially ethno-supremacist state, which must be, in order to maintain its national identity, a so-called Jewish state, although it can't exactly define what Jewish is. Feels like Mike Huckabee, this Christian evangelical, gets treated like a better Jew than I would by the Israeli Interior Ministry that might not even let me in. I don't even know if that guy had a bris. Definitely didn't have a bar mitzvah, but he had a meeting with Israeli spy master Jonathan Pollard.
Yeah.
So what that means that Israel has to violently demographically engineer this reality by maintaining itself as a borderless colonialist entity that is constantly expanding settlements to establish Lebensraum, and it's moving into Syria, into the Golan. It has now established a long-term presence in southern Lebanon, and it does have expansionist intentions there. It is annexing parts of the West Bank de facto through settler terror and military presence. And Netanyahu has boasted that he has taken 60% of the Gaza Strip, which is now just mostly destroyed and is effectively a death camp, and that he will take more and move to 70%. That corresponds directly with Netanyahu's own expression of Zionist logic, in which Israel cannot exist as a Jewish state unless there are 70% Jews and 30% non-Jews, i.e. indigenous Palestinians, on any piece of land. And if Palestinians maintain more of their population on that land, then it cannot be part of the Jewish state. That's a mandate for ethnic cleansing, and it corresponds directly with what Israel is doing with the yellow line in the Gaza Strip. So this is why no one can recognize Israel in the region, and why Israel is in this permanent state of war, because of the anachronistic character of how it defines itself as a state. It cannot be a state of all its citizens or all its people. And so that's also why you have Hezbollah. You think, what Hezbollah? Like, they're like this group of Shia ideologues who exist to just destroy Israel and fight Israel. And they just, no. Why was Israel in Lebanon in the 1980s? Why did it invade Lebanon? It was supposedly to push back, not Hezbollah, not the Shia population, but the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, who were composed of refugees in Lebanon who had been pushed out of what was Palestine from 1948 on. There was a massive wave of refugees in 1967 as well, in order to establish the so-called Jewish state. There wouldn't have been refugees in Lebanon. Lebanon wouldn't be in this crisis had Israel not been established along the guidelines of Zionism and ethno-supremacism. So Israel goes in, brings its military into Lebanon, and they initially were told that the Shia population would support them and throw candy at them, but they couldn't resist abusing the Shia population in the south and abusing the Lebanese population in general as they quickly marched to Beirut, caused massive war crimes, formed alliances with the most odious elements, the Lebanese Phalange, which carried out the Sabra and Shatila massacre with Israeli guidance, and so on. So Hezbollah was created to defend Lebanon's population, and particularly the Shia population of the south, against this force that actually aimed to essentially occupy Lebanon either by proxy through the South Lebanese army or through the Lebanese Phalange, which are, the Lebanese forces today remain an ally of Israel, and to push that population out. So Hezbollah exists to defend Lebanon against this aggressive force. Hezbollah would not have existed if Israel had not established itself as an exclusively Jewish state. So that's my point, is Hezbollah is a reflection of the toxic effect of Zionist logic on the region. And you say, oh, well, what can we do about them? You don't like them. There's a reality there, that a political reality, Mario, that you have to recognize, which is that Hezbollah is the largest parliamentary faction in Lebanon, and that this war that Israel's waging is also an excuse for Joseph Aoun and Samir Jaja and all of these corrupt forces that have no clear mandate to rule to actually remove the largest parliamentary faction, their enemy, by proxy through Israeli force, because they can't do it by politics alone. They can't do it with the consent of the Lebanese public. And in order to do that, what else do they have to do? Something that is absolutely criminal, that is not being sufficiently condemned, which is the ethnic cleansing of the Shia population of Lebanese citizens in the south. They're being ethnically cleansed. It's a war on the Shia community, because Hezbollah can't be defeated on the battlefield or at the ballot box.
No place gonna hold me. Says you can't live that way. I told her love ain't chained down. It just comes and drifts away. Yeah.
The situation of the Ukrainian army on the battlefield continues to deteriorate rapidly. A few hours ago, retired Ukrainian Army General Sergei Krivonos confirmed that the Ukrainian defense in the strategically important city of Konstantinivka had ceased to exist. Moreover, he also admitted that Ukrainian units, located in the northwestern part of the city, began to leave their positions voluntarily. It is noteworthy that many Ukrainian military TG channels also confirmed the flight of Ukrainian soldiers and officers from Konstantinivka. Furthermore, General Krivonos once again launched a broadside against Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, the Ukrainian army is suffering a crushing defeat on the battlefield, while this white powder lover continues to brag about useless drone strikes on Moscow, convincing everyone that Russia has allegedly already lost the war. General Krivonos notes that such Zelensky's policy and tactics will lead Ukraine to complete destruction. As an example, General Krivonos recalled the loss of such strategically important cities as Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Pokrovsk, and Myrnograd by the Ukrainian army. According to him, every time the Ukrainian army lost a particular city, the Kiev authorities simply stopped talking about it and forgot about the lost settlements. As a result, the Ukrainian and Western media have completely stopped mentioning in their articles dozens of strategically important cities lost by Ukraine, as well as the hundreds of thousands of lives of Ukrainian soldiers and officers who died there. General Krivonos expresses confidence that the same thing will happen with Konstantinivka. According to him, after the Ukrainian army finally loses Konstantinivka, Zelensky will simply forget about this city, continuing to achieve media effect through useless drone attacks on Russia, which do not affect the situation on the battlefield. Well, my dear truth seekers, I totally agree with General Krivonos. While Zelensky and the pro-Ukrainian trolls continue to brag about massive drone attacks on Russia, the Ukrainian army continues to retreat in all strategically important directions of the front. So, a few hours ago, war correspondents from both sides confirmed that Russian units of the group of troops south had crossed the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal and taken control of the settlement of Yurkovka in the Donetsk direction of the front. Thus, over the past 72 hours, Yurkovka has become the fourth settlement in a row that came under the Russian army's control in this direction of the front. Meanwhile, while the Russian Defense Ministry is preparing to officially announce the liberation of Konstantinivka, Russian units of the group of troops Sever have achieved another major success in the Kharkiv direction of the front. So, a few hours ago, it became known that Russian units had crossed the Severnaya Yureknya River and entered the settlement of Petroivanovka on the move. The advance of the Russian units turned out to be so rapid that within 5 hours, 90% of the village's territory came under their control. Furthermore, simultaneously with this, Russian troops entered the neighboring Mitrofanovka. My dear truth seekers, the entry of Russian units into such settlements as Petroivanovka and Mitrofanovka indicates that the Ukrainian army was unable to push back Russian troops across the Oskol River and regain control of the entire northern flank in the Kupiansk direction. It is noteworthy that Polish military experts also recognize the deplorable state of the Ukrainian army. In particular, they admitted that while the Kiev authorities and their Western allies are rejoicing at drone attacks on Moscow, 15,000 soldiers from the 28th, 36th, 100th, and 156th Brigades of the Ukrainian army have been surrounded. According to Polish experts, these cauldrons were formed in the Donetsk direction, near Konstantinivka. Furthermore, Polish experts also confirmed the flight of Ukrainian officers from Kramatorsk. It is reported that these are officers from the command posts of the 11th and 19th Corps of the Ukrainian Army. Meanwhile, while the Ukrainian army continues to suffer a crushing defeat on the battlefield, the Kiev regime has launched another drone strike on Moscow. So, a few hours ago, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said that on the night of June 20th, the capital's air defense shot down 16 enemy drones. At the same time, he admitted that in the Moscow region, Ukrainian drones damaged 20 apartment buildings, resulting in the death of an 8-year-old girl. It is noteworthy that immediately after that, Russia launched a massive missile attack on logistics facilities in the fuel and energy sector of Ukraine, in regions such as Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv. For example, in the southwestern part of the city of Odessa, Russia struck 2 cargo ships and dozens of fuel trucks. It is noteworthy that these fuel trucks were destroyed immediately after they crossed the Romanian-Ukrainian border. In the western part of Kharkiv, Russian missiles wiped out several trainloads of diesel fuel, and also hit the territory of the Kharkiv Military College. It is reported that as a result of this attack, an armory, located on the territory of this military college, was completely destroyed. Meanwhile, even though on the night of June 20th, Russia decided not to strike Kiev, very dramatic events were unfolding in the Ukrainian capital. As it turned out, armed groups of people infiltrated Kiev from several directions at once, and began a massive seizure of armories. As a result, for 50 minutes, in different parts of Kiev, shooting from automatic weapons was heard. It is reliably known that as a result of this shooting, several representatives of the Security Service of Ukraine and the city police were killed. Later, insiders confirmed that the British Special Services even evacuated Zelensky from Kiev. It is noteworthy that on the morning of June 20th, information appeared that this attack was carried out by armed groups that are subordinate to the Ukrainian oligarchs. According to Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Oleg Ivanikov, Zelensky has made many enemies among the Ukrainian oligarchs. According to him, these oligarchs are dissatisfied with Zelensky's policy, and continue to finance private military companies and criminal groups in Ukraine from abroad. At the same time, it is reported that the scale of this support has reached a level at which these groups are gradually becoming a real army. And this army hates Zelensky and his gang wholeheartedly. Thus, it becomes clear that if Zelensky manages to survive by the end of the war, not only the Russian FSB and Ramzan Kadyrov, but also the Ukrainian oligarchs will declare a hunt for him.
Yeah, I saddled up my shoes, headed out at dawn. Ain't no place gonna hold me when the road keep rolling on. Left my baby crying, said you can't live that way. Left my baby crying.
They're already there. They've landed. There are pictures of them coming off the airplane, and they're met by I'm not sure who the delegation greeting them was, but they were warmly greeted. In addition, though, you've got the prime minister and the head of the army for Pakistan. They're going as well.
Yeah, and Qatari. We have Qatari members of the mediators. I don't know who's that person, the foreign minister of Qatar or someone.
Yeah, I think it's the foreign minister.
Yeah.
So you got a high level. The Qataris and the Pakistanis have been playing a critical role as intermediaries. I don't know if there will be direct talks between Iran and the United States where they sit in the same room and communicate. In the past, it has been, the Iranians talk to the Pakistanis or Qataris, and then they turn around and talk to the United States, and then it's always indirect. So if they get some direct communication, maybe there'll be some progress. It looks like the Trump administration did get Israel to stop the attacks. They haven't withdrawn, but at least they've stopped the attack in southern Lebanon. So that has eased some of the urgency so far, it appears. Or if Israel's still firing, I haven't seen any news reports about it.
No, I haven't seen because the latest news is that they have accepted some sort of ceasefire, because in the last 24 hours, more than 10 times they said there is a ceasefire. No, right now we don't have it. They're attacking us, we're responding. They're attacking, we're retaliating. This is the same scenario that we've seen. But I think the head of IAEA is there as well, Larry.
That may be premature for him to show up, because Iran's not ready to talk about nukes. So they got other things. Unfreeze their assets, lift the sanctions, and get Israel the hell out of southern Lebanon.
Last night and the night before, we had huge sort of attacks on the part of Israelis and the defensive on the part of Hezbollah, because they wanted to get somewhere in Ali Tahrir Hill.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes is a fortress, something like that, and they have, I don't know, tunnels there. Hezbollah has some sort of tunnels there, it seems, as it was reported. They wanted to capture that part, which is so important strategically for Israelis, but they have failed. So far, they have lost 4 soldiers. Last night, 13 soldiers. 13 soldiers were injured last night, and 4 the night before. 4 casualties, 4 killed the night before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're suffering larger casualties now, I believe, than they did in 2006 during that attempt. So it'll be ultimately, that was why in 2006 the casualties got too painful and they withdrew. And I think they're headed on to that same trajectory right now.
Yeah. Larry, there is something serious going on in the United States when it comes to, I talked today with many people from different sort of ideas, from the right, left, center. But the situation is somehow, you look at J.D. Vance, he's compared, in his recent podcast, he compared Israel to France and United Kingdom. He said, they're allied like France and the United Kingdom. But is that the understanding on the part of Israelis? Do they really feel they're like France to the United States?
Well, I think a better way to look at it is Israel fancied itself as having the very special relationship with the United States, and that it was, we were romantic partners almost. And now Israel has woken up to find out that we're dating other people. And so we're no longer in what they thought was like a monogamous relationship with them. And so we're, from their standpoint, we've actually betrayed them. Some view what Trump has said and done as a betrayal. But that's what's fascinating about all this. It'd be one thing if they interpreted it, J.D. Vance meant we treat Israel like Britain and France because they are important allies. Then I think that, if Israel interpreted it that way, they'd be saying, "Oh, that's cool." If they had, I'm not sure what else he would have meant by that comparison, because it's not like, we have bad relations with France and the UK. It's just we've got what you call normal adult relationships with them. At times, we oppose each other, and at times we're singing on the same sheet of music.
Yeah, what he was trying to say, that Israel is not something special to us. They're like other nations that are our allies in Europe. And
Yeah.
but
Well, I was just going to say it'd be better off if you would have said, we think of Israel like we think of Botswana. That would have sent a message, or Bolivia, or Liechtenstein. To say that they're a small irrelevant country, that would have sent a real message. But you're equating them with two countries that are part of the UN Security Council. That's not exactly an insult.
We had Israel Hayom going after Donald Trump, and we know who's the owner of Israel Hayom. Is the Adelson family. We've been talking about this family since Donald Trump was elected in the United States. Right now, they were totally supporting Donald Trump. Right now, they're coming against him. And who's the product of this family is Marco Rubio. You're looking at Marco Rubio behind Donald Trump when he's talking about putting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. He's so sad, looking around. He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, no, he didn't look like a happy camper. We'll see. You would think that if some really opposed the policy, they'd walk out. But I think the reason they don't walk out is they want to stay as close as possible to be able to try to continue to influence U.S. policy to stay in alignment with Israel.
Do you think that the Trump administration is divided in two sections? Two different sectors, America first and Israel first.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think there is still a strong Israel first contingent that's appalled by this, by Trump's shift or Trump's betrayal. But there is I'm not sure it's growing, but there certainly is a segment that's more grounded realistically, that realizes how costly this war is for Donald Trump politically, how costly it is to be seen as just a bitch that belongs to Israel, where Israel comes first and all American interests go second. Now, a lot of people are getting very fed up with that.
Randy Fine tweeted that anybody but JD Vance about 2028. Yeah. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I saw it and said, what is going on with this guy? Larry, who's supporting JD Vance in the Trump administration? I believe there are many people like JD Vance and Joe Kent, because before Joe Kent resigned from the Trump administration, we didn't know anything about it. But who's supporting?
Well, Joe Kent wasn't much of a public figure. I mean, I knew about him. I knew his past. You got Elbridge Colby at the Department of War at the Pentagon. He's like the Deputy Secretary of Defense. I think he supports J.D. Vance. You've got, I think, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as well supports J.D. So he's not without some support. Trump, I think Trump's increasingly losing touch with reality. There's parts of him that can stay in tune and other parts of him not. And just, watching him today get into a pissing match with Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, it was just absurd. He's behaving like some teenage girl who has her feelings hurt and lashes out.
What was the necessity of that? Saying that she wanted to take a picture with me? I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, and she's been firing right back at him.
Yeah, she responded that she said, I don't beg, and Italy doesn't beg as well. So we don't beg here in Italy. She basically said that to Donald Trump. But she said that Donald Trump doesn't treat the allies of the United States, in a good manner. And that was the whole point. The guy is, Larry, coming back to the Trump administration, Rubio is not part of the negotiations. I don't know what is the leverage that Rubio possesses in these negotiations that are happening. He has never been part of, not in Ukraine, and right now in Iran, with Iranians as well, you don't see that much of Rubio's role. What is his influence on the negotiations, if he has some?
I'm not sure he has that much. As you said, he's not front and center. If he was really leading this negotiation, and maybe he chose not to be involved because he sees, he says, if I get involved with this and it goes bad, I'll be blamed. Instead, he's going to let J.D. Vance be blamed. So
yeah, but when you look at the negotiations, the team it's going to be in Switzerland talking with Iranians, are we going to see the same sort of outcome as we've seen before in Islamabad? Because in Islamabad, the two sides were talking. You mentioned that you don't.
But you froze up there.
So putting that aside,
you froze up. You said,
do you expect any sort of good or positive outcome with the second round, with what's going on tomorrow?
There is a group from State Department. There are some State Department diplomats or foreign service officers that were already in Switzerland talking to some Iranian counterparts. So the communications were not completely cut off, or they were already speaking through intermediaries. This, I think they will come out. It depends on Israel, really. For now, there is a ceasefire, and the United States is succeeded in getting Israel to stop firing and bombing in Lebanon. If they restart that within the next 24 to 36 hours, then I think Iran will suspend the talks, and they will. They're gonna launch a strong retaliatory strike against Israel. Now, will they continue to keep the lines of communication open to the United States? Maybe. That's not impossible. Will the United States be willing to sit down and continue to talk to them? That's the question. That's what I don't have the answer to. So it is at least there won't be any substantive talks until, let's see, tonight, right now it's closing in on 11, 23, 20 hours. So it'll be midnight in a bit in Switzerland. By the time we talk tomorrow, they will have had discussions. J.D. Vance, he'll get there. He'll arrive about 6 a.m. in the morning. So, he'll sleep on the plane going over, I would presume, and then get up and go to work. So they could, if nothing else, we'll find out if they can come to an agreement on how they're going to conduct the negotiations. Will they continue to do it through an intermediary? Will they do it in person? There are, the fact that Pakistan sending such a high-level delegation means, at least from Pakistan's standpoint, they're taking it seriously. And hopefully Pepe and I will have some more information about that in the next few hours.
Two points with this meeting that is going to happen. One of them is the Iranian, on the part of Iranians. I'm sure that you've seen the statement of the Iranian supreme leader. He said that he's not optimistic about what's going on, but he gave the permission to the Iranian president. But there are people in Iran, they say there is no positive outcome for the negotiation, so we don't need to negotiate with the United States. They're so strong in the way that they're thinking, that they believe that, this way. But there are people that are negotiating right now. As we know, they're in Switzerland. On the part of the United States, what is the complexity of that? We have the two sides fighting in Washington, one of them in favor of Israel. How do you describe the situation in Washington?
Well, it's just typical Washington. I mean, I think there's some shock going around the various quarters over Donald Trump and J.D. Vance being so forthright and speaking out against Israel of late. Now, what we haven't heard of much in the public, it's just, it's being leaked out by people in the interior, inside the Pentagon in particular, is that the only military efforts underway by the United States right now are to withdraw personnel and planes from the region. So that's underway. And so as long as that's happening, that reduces the likelihood of conflict. So that that's let's call that a positive development.
They're withdrawing from Iraq, from Kuwait.
Yeah. So, in the weeks prior to February 28th, we had reports of these F-35s and F-15s and F-16s being flown to to Cyprus and to Incirlik and to Jordan and to Israel. So you had this whole fleet of aircraft moving there, because it took about 2 to 3 weeks to build the force up and to get them there on the ground and get the infrastructure put into place. Well, now the reverse is happening, because if we're going to stay, then there wouldn't be any planning and movements afoot to pull them out. But the planners are at work scheduling who's going to leave, when, where, because they have to position KC-135 tankers all along that route, because an F-35 flying, it can only go 600 miles without carrying a combat load. So about every 400 miles they've got to top off and get refueled until they ultimately get back to their base, whether it's in Florida or New Hampshire or wherever.
Yeah.
And let me say also the same for the ships, the Navy, the carrier strike group. They're pulling back. Diego Garcia, they're drawing down. So you're getting a drawdown of U.S. personnel and assets across the region.
Today, Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz again because they wanted to put pressure on the United States. In your opinion, is it going to be better for Iran to put pressure on the United States than the United States on Israel? Because you mentioned Iran may attack Israel. Do you think that's a necessity for Iran to attack Israel directly, or closing the Strait of Hormuz would put pressure, sufficiently to bring them to some sort of sanity?
Well, I think it's a myth that the Strait of Hormuz was, quote, open, because the London insurance companies, the maritime insurers, they haven't certified that the Strait of Hormuz is safe to travel through. So the only ships, to my knowledge, that have really been going through the Strait of Hormuz are Iranian ships. If there have been any others, maybe there have been, but not that many. So because that's one problem, that is, until the mines are cleared up out of the Persian Gulf, those ships aren't going to move. So while it is in theory open, in practical reality, it's been very, very limited movement of ships. I think it's only been like 7 ships a day that have been going through, and my understanding is they're all Iranian that are taking product to China.
Yeah, I don't know what How about the GCC countries? Are they going to be able to use the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, you got to have a ship. So they don't have their own navies, is my understanding. They're using foreign ships. So until those foreign ships have permission, have the insurance to sell, they're not going to be taking anything out of the Gulf states unless it's an Iranian ship that goes there to pick it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to get across here, that we keep saying, oh, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed. Well, you know, to say it's open implies that there's a lot of activity. There isn't. And vice versa. To say it's closed means what? No traffic? No, Iran's going to continue to send. It's made close to $2.1 billion in the last week.
I think, Larry, that the situation with Israel, if Donald Trump lets the political parties in Israel take care of Benjamin Netanyahu, that would be hugely beneficial for him. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that could be the case for Donald Trump?
Oh, well, no, not. Explain that to me, because
because
if you get rid of,
they really want to remove him from power.
Okay,
they really want to do that.
But is that going to change? Do you think that's going to change Israel's policy?
No, I don't believe that that's going to change Israel, but that's going to change the leverage Benjamin Netanyahu has on the families like Adelson. I don't know.
No, not necessarily. Look, no, it's not. I don't think it's going to change it at all. I mean, the attitude of the Israelis towards Iran is almost set in stone. So whether Bibi's there or not, it's not going to change Israel's policy towards Iran. It's not like there is some moderate Israeli who rejects Zionism and who's standing on the sidelines with people clamoring for them to come into power. I mean, that's not happening at all. They're just, getting rid of Bibi. Let me put it this way. Bibi Netanyahu is an important asset for Israel in terms of he at least speaks in a way that Americans easily understand him. He lived in America, went to school in America, so he understands America better than many of his Israeli counterparts. Certainly better than Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, as examples. So there is, if losing Bibi Netanyahu could make Israel more ineffective in lobbying the Congress, both the House and the Senate, and getting their support, because you get some of these Israeli spokesmen are just they're violent and they're obnoxious, and they don't play well to the American public. Bibi, and he's the most two-faced son of a bitch you've ever seen. In Hebrew, he says one thing, and in English, he says another. Smooth-talking man.
I think the United States has many means at its disposal to put pressure on Israel, not only basically when it comes to the aid to Israel, but also using UN. Every time UN comes out with a new resolution on Israel, they simply veto the whole thing, and they don't let anything happen against Israel. Is that going to change, in your opinion?
No, not easily. So, it'll be status quo for a while.
And the borders, the issue, Larry, I think if Iran and the United States manage to force Israel to define its borders, that would be hugely beneficial. Because right now they don't have any border, they don't define their borders, and that's why they're in the southern part of Lebanon, in the southern part of Syria, in Gaza. They're talking about 70%. This is a legal issue, in my opinion, and they can address that easily. The international community can come together and talk about it.
No, the international community is not going to do anything. Hell, they haven't done anything over, 51 years. Civil war started back in 1975, supposedly ended in 1990, but it's essentially, the status quo has been there ever since, of this division. And and now once again, Israel's come back in to bomb and kill and strafe. You don't even see the government of Lebanon standing up for itself, declaring war on Israel. How dare you attack us?
Yeah. I think GCC countries, as an outcome of this war, they're learning something that was not available for them before, or maybe they were not forced to understand that, which is the new reality. I don't know how is that going to be beneficial for Gaza, for the West Bank, because right now everybody's talking about Lebanon, talking about the war, which we know today we've learned that they're bombing Gaza. Israel is bombing Gaza City and Khan Yunis, the two parts of Gaza. And nobody's talking about it in the news.
Right. They don't care. That's been my point. Simply do not care. And, that's why they almost in desperation have to fight on just to try to get the world to listen, to pay attention.
Larry, Switzerland has been a very important place for negotiations, but they have lost their position during the war in Ukraine because they took side.
Right.
Do you think that they're in the process of repairing their picture? They're somehow getting back or retrieving that sort of idea that we had about Switzerland before?
Yeah, I mean, to be perceived as neutral and to try to reinforce that very well could be. It is, they're meeting in a place called Bergenstock, which is a remote location. It's owned by, I think, the Qatari emir. They may be actually meeting at his house or his compound. Because it's not just a 4 or 5 bedroom house. We're talking a pretty substantial place. This is, you've got, I think, in the person of Qatar and Pakistan, there is strong financial interest in getting the commerce flowing again. But at the same time, Iran, I think, is making very clear that nothing is going to flow naturally or normally until the promises that are implicit in the 14-point agreement are fulfilled. Now, again, it looks like the request from Iran to the United States to get Israel back on a leash worked, because it appears that Israel is back on a leash right now. They're not out bombing, at least in Lebanon. As you say, they may be bombing in Gaza, but they've at least stopped it in Lebanon.
Removing Iran from the scene, who's eager or who's willing to put pressure on Israel in the Middle East, Larry, today, with what has happened, with all this madness happening, all these countries that are Muslim or non-Muslim, who is willing to put pressure on Israel?
Well, so far the one, Pakistan, and to a lesser extent Qatar, those two have been active in these negotiations. And I would say actually Oman as well, to they've done everything in their power to try to promote a peace agreement and, something that would benefit both sides. But, Israel has always, interfered and is a spoiler for U.S. Decisions. Now, finally, it looks like Trump has said, "No, I've had enough of this. We're not going to put up with this." And and now we got to have some more face-to-face talks in Switzerland.
Yeah. Deep down, the way that Donald Trump thinks about the war, Larry, do you think that he's really feeling to get back to the war, or he's done with the war?
I'm not trying to be flippant, but I think he has a shorter attention span than your baby daughter. Okay, she's now 2 years old, or 3, and you know how 2 and 3-year-olds are. They
2.5.
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah, grabs one thing, got it, looks at that, and goes and grabs another thing, and not a long attention span. I'm not sure he's got a long attention span for this. He keeps saying crazy things. Again, he came out today with a truth. I won't call it a tweet, but he truths on Truth Social, and is warning that Iran's never going to collect a red dime whatsoever, and then not now, not ever. Well, he says that, but that's just not true. And what amuses me are these people say, "Oh, well, the United States and Europe, they'll go back in there and reopen the strait." Yeah, good luck with that. They couldn't do it during the war. And now all of a sudden they're going to claim they got a stronger military presence. It'll just it'll bring Europe into the war in an unnecessary way. And they're going to get, they're going to get warned.
Yeah. I think the answer to the question is somehow we have to ask ourselves, how is the situation the same? Has anything changed since the ceasefire was announced by the United States? I don't see anything happening. Any change has happened since then that Donald Trump somehow decides to go. Maybe he would produce more, because I have received some information from some sources. Maybe the United States is producing 10,000 missiles in a short period of time, and they're going to get back to start the war. And
are you saying that you've been told that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's nonsensical.
Yeah.
Yeah. With what? With what?
Actually.
Yeah. It's like with what? They don't have rare earth minerals. You need rare earth minerals for those. You need magnets. China's sitting on those and not sharing. In fact, China is accelerating. It just sold another $46 billion worth of U.S. Treasury bills. So it's not buying them up, it's selling them off, which is going to increase pressure on the United States economically.
I think a huge part of, Larry, what's going on is related to what's going on domestically in the United States. I don't know if you've watched Patrick Bet-David, the podcaster, who's also, he's Iranian American, he's Zionist. Yeah. He supported the war on Iran, the war against Iran. And right now, in the latest podcast, he was comparing Marco Rubio to J.D. Vance, saying that J.D. Vance is faking everything. The guy there who's in charge is Marco Rubio. Look at him. He's the 2028 presidential candidate of Republican Party. When they go that far, you see there is something going on. These Zionists are investing in something. And his podcast is so popular among Republicans. Mm-hmm. That's why something serious is happening within the administration. They're trying to remove one part that they feel that they're not that much connected with the Zionists in the United States.
Well, you wish that there was some coherent policy on the part of Trump with respect to the upcoming midterms. He's, until a week ago, he spent a lot of his energy attacking former supporters that are very influential in the world, in your world of podcasting. Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Candace Owens. Those three. This a guy, his name is Ian. I forget the last name, but he's been pretty popular. So it's not working. Trump has split and divided his base over that, but then he was still seen as, well, he had this solid support from Israel. Well, that's gone now. And, maybe he did calculate that he had to separate himself from Israel now, maybe try to win back the Thomas Masseys and the Marjorie Taylor Greens before the midterms. I think it's too little too late. I think he made a fatal error in covering up for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, that's the other thing I'm wondering now, because we'd speculated that perhaps, the Israelis were blackmailing Trump, which is why he was doing some of the stuff he did with maintaining the war in Iran. But the actions he's now taken this week signal just the opposite, that he's pulling out, that he's no longer interested in staying in there to fight, seeing that it will be a drag on the election. And they may have very well calculated that the truth of the matter is that Zionist Jews are a very, 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 very small minority of voters in the overall scheme of things. And that, yes, there are some well-placed Zionists who have a lot of money and appear to have some social influence, but I think they calculated that there was more to be gained by distancing themselves from that Zionist crowd.
These Zionist Jews, something like 10% of the Jews in the United States, because most of the Jews that I talk with basically are against Israel.
Yeah.
None of them is in favor of Israel. That's why I don't have any sort of understanding of how much of these people supporting Israel, how many of these people, what is the percentage of that supports Israel.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that number is. All I know is the overall number of Jews in the United States is around 10 million out of 35 million. So that's really not a significant number. I mean, you can make the case that their influence is disproportionate to their numbers. That's for sure.
You've said that it's too late for Donald Trump. You mean about the midterm election? Is that the case?
Right.
But it's not too late for J.D. Vance.
Well, J.D. Vance you're looking beyond the midterm to election 2028, 2 years. So I think it's going to be very, very hard for Trump to turn this around right now. He'll be, it's just, particularly if what he was told about the economy comes true. The reason, let's recall again, the reason he reversed course on Iran and signed on to the memorandum of understanding is it was briefed that how dire the world economic situation is going to be shortly, because as people run out of their of oil reserves, and particularly the United States runs out of its strategic oil reserve.
Yeah, I think if he loses the midterm election, that's going to mean for Donald Trump, that means what is the downside of that for Donald Trump if they lose the midterm election? Are they going to impeach him? Is that something substantial coming out of the impeachment? If he continues with the same sort of policy, he's going to have a lot of enemies among Zionists.
Well, let's say that this economic tsunami that hits the United States starts arriving on our shores end of July, first week of August, and that gasoline doubles in price, literally doubles. It goes from $3.50 to $7 a gallon. That there are shortages of food in the stores. That there are some rationing starts to take place. And so the economy grinds to a halt. Well, at that point, the anger, you got us into this mess, and he'll be insisting things are great, and when objectively they're not great at all. So then at that point, if he loses the control of, or Republicans are elected who hate Trump, then you could see the control of both the House and the Senate shift. In the Senate, you need 2/3 to convict. You might very well find the 2/3 of the Senate ready to convict Donald Trump. And then all of a sudden he could be facing, removal from office at a minimum.
By the way, he needs the Congress for the ongoing negotiations with Iran. Let's assume everything getting positive, they're advancing, they're getting something out of these talks, and he's going to need Congress to help him with the case of sanctions against Iran.
Well, ideally, they would negotiate a deal with Iran that they would then bring to the Congress to get ratified as a treaty of sorts. I don't know if you'd be willing to do that, or if, but that needs to be done for, if nothing else, from the sake of